Would you give me the policy, please, that Ms. Pridgeon has, and also the single sheet of paper, and I'm going to explain.
The courtroom fell into stunned silence the moment the defendant admitted she had crashed her former friend's car into a brick wall on a dark Maryland highway, transforming what once seemed like a harmless favor between close friends into a bitter legal war overflowing with betrayal, emotional accusations, shattered trust, and possible insurance fraud. From the very beginning, the atmosphere inside the courtroom felt tense and uncomfortable, the kind of tension that makes every person in the audience stop whispering and start paying attention. At the plaintiff's table sat Miss Pridgeon, visibly exhausted and emotionally drained, staring across the courtroom at a woman she once trusted enough to leave in charge of her car while she traveled across the country to Las Vegas in August 2014. According to Miss Pridgeon, she never imagined that simple act of trust would eventually destroy their friendship forever. She explained that she originally left the car behind in Maryland because she believed her trip would only be temporary. But after realizing she would not return anytime soon, she asked the defendant to help store the vehicle until she came back. The arrangement sounded simple at first, almost ordinary, but Judge Judy quickly sensed that something about the story did not feel right. Every time the plaintiff spoke about the defendant, her voice carried a mixture of anger, humiliation, and disbelief, as though the emotional damage caused by the incident hurt even more than the loss of the vehicle itself. Then came the moment that changed the entire hearing. Judge Judy calmly asked the defendant whether she had been driving the car when the accident occurred, and without hesitation, the defendant admitted she had. The audience immediately leaned forward as Judge Judy pressed further, asking where the accident happened and whether another vehicle was involved. But when the defendant revealed she had crashed directly into a brick wall without colliding with another car, a wave of tension spread across the room. Judge Judy repeated the phrase slowly and sharply, emphasizing that it was a non-movable brick wall, causing nervous laughter to ripple through the audience. The defendant insisted the crash was not her fault, claiming the vehicle suddenly malfunctioned after she heard a loud pop while driving on Interstate 295. According to her story, the car spun violently out of control before smashing into the wall. But Judge Judy immediately demanded proof. She asked for mechanic reports, repair records, expert evaluations, anything that could support the claim that the vehicle failed mechanically before the crash. The defendant had nothing. No documents, no witnesses, no evidence beyond her own emotional explanation. The weakness of her story instantly raised suspicions throughout the courtroom. Yet the more Judge Judy questioned her, the more complicated the case became, because the plaintiff and defendant began accusing each other of dishonesty. Miss Pridgeon insisted she never gave the defendant permission to drive the vehicle at all, and claimed she only discovered the crash nearly a month later. Her voice shook with frustration as she described feeling completely blindsided by the destruction of her car and the collapse of a friendship she once valued deeply. But the defendant fired back immediately, insisting she absolutely had permission to drive the car, and arguing that she had full access to the keys because she was trusted to care for the vehicle while the plaintiff was away. Suddenly, the courtroom transformed from a dispute over property damage into a much darker conflict, centered around trust, consent, and conflicting versions of the truth. Judge Judy listened carefully, watching every facial expression and every hesitation with the instincts of someone who had heard thousands of courtroom excuses before. Then, the hearing took an explosive turn when the discussion shifted toward the insurance policy. Miss Pridgeon confidently claimed her insurance only covered herself and her mother driving the car, and argued that the defendant was never included under the policy. That statement immediately caught Judge Judy's attention because something about it sounded suspiciously incorrect. With growing skepticism, Judge Judy ordered the actual insurance documents into court and began reviewing the paperwork herself while the courtroom sat in total silence. Moments later, the entire atmosphere changed. Judge Judy revealed that the plaintiff had either completely misunderstood the insurance policy or deliberately misrepresented its meaning. The exclusion referenced in the policy only applied to specific household members intentionally removed from coverage, usually teenage drivers who would increase insurance premiums, not to every person who might operate the vehicle. In other words, the defendant was likely covered under the policy the entire time. The courtroom reacted with shock as Judge Judy explained that if the insurance company denied the claim, it may have happened because Miss Pridgeon told them the defendant did not have permission to drive the vehicle. That revelation changed everything. Suddenly, the hearing was no longer about a reckless crash into a wall. It became a suspicious battle involving possible false statements, insurance disputes, and conflicting claims about consent. Both women immediately started talking over one another, each insisting the other was lying. Miss Pridgeon doubled down, insisting she never authorized the defendant to drive the car under any circumstances, while the defendant argued she had every reason to believe she was allowed to use it because she had possession of the keys and responsibility for storing the vehicle. The emotional hostility between them became impossible to ignore, as years of broken trust appeared to spill into the courtroom in real time. Judge Judy struggled to untangle the increasingly chaotic story, while also trying to determine whether someone was manipulating the insurance system. Then another layer of confusion emerged when the defendant claimed she had already paid the plaintiff hundreds of dollars after the accident through small cash installments made over time. Miss Pridgeon disputed the amounts entirely, insisting the payments were either exaggerated or incomplete. Neither side had reliable receipts, clear records, or consistent testimony. Every answer seemed to create even more contradictions. The courtroom audience watched in silence as the case spiraled deeper into confusion and suspicion. At one point, even Judge Judy appeared visibly frustrated by the conflicting stories and emotional arguments. Still, she attempted to simplify the dispute by focusing on the insurance deductible itself. If the policy truly covered the accident, then the plaintiff's actual financial loss should have been limited to the $1,000 deductible, minus any payments already received from the defendant. But even while calculating those numbers, Judge Judy's suspicion continued growing stronger because she sensed that somebody inside the courtroom was hiding part of the truth. Then came the dramatic conclusion that left the entire courtroom stunned. Judge Judy suddenly stopped the proceedings and announced that she refused to involve herself any further in what appeared to be a larger insurance dispute filled with conflicting claims and suspicious behavior. Looking directly at both women, she declared that someone was attempting to scam the system and made it clear that it would not be her courtroom getting manipulated. In one final powerful moment, she dismissed the case without prejudice and ordered the former friends to take their dispute back to Nevada court for further resolution. The decision left both women speechless. The plaintiff looked devastated. The defendant looked shocked. And as the courtroom emptied, the audience remained deeply divided over one haunting question that Judge Judy herself never fully answered. Who was really telling the truth?